You're mine for the night. Mountain man tells obese woman he rescued from slave auction. You're mine for the night, or you're no use to me at all. The sheriff sneered, and the men around him roared with laughter. The woman on the platform flinched at his words, iron shackles rattling around her wrists. She was forced to stand under the scorching New Mexico sun while the rest of town watched like it was a show, not a crime. It was the summer of 1879 in the border town of Red Hollow, a place where the law wore a badge by day and sold human lives by night. Today's special event was an illegal slave auction for mail-order brides who had been deemed defective, returned goods, not worth the paperwork. No one called it what it truly was, trafficking. At the very end of the splintered wooden platform stood the last woman left unsold. Cora O'Reilly, 25, from Ireland. She was big, not just a little soft, but truly, visibly fat in a world that treated fatness like a sin. The cheap cotton dress someone had thrown on her clung to her body in all the wrong ways, soaked with sweat and dust. Her arms and calves were mottled with yellowing bruises, her cheeks still swollen from a recent slap. Flame-red hair, once carefully braided, now hung in tangled ropes around her flushed, round face, and her eyes, pale, storm-gray, looked like they were somewhere far away, already halfway detached from her own fate. The auctioneer, a thin man with rotten teeth named Finch, jabbed her shoulder with his stick. "Turn around, so. Let 'em see what they're buying." Cora turned slowly, the platform creaking under her weight. Murmurs rose from the crowd. Look at the size of her. She'd eat a man out of house and home in a week. Bet the bed breaks the first night. Someone spat toward her bare feet. Another man tossed a chicken bone that bounced off her shin. Cora stared straight ahead, jaw trembling, refusing to beg. She'd begged enough in this country. Finch lifted his arms. "All right, gentlemen, this one's had 3 contracts canceled. Too fat, too slow, eats too much, depending on who you ask." Laughter burst out around him. "But she's strong as an ox, can scrub, haul, cook, and do whatever else you demand, so let's start at $20. Who'll take the big girl for 20? Silence. 15 then. $15 for a full set of arms and legs. A man near the front called out, "You ought to pay us to haul her away, Finch." More laughter. Finch's smile tightened. $10. Come on, boys. You can work this one from dawn to dusk. She won't break. Still nothing. Cora felt the burn of humiliation rise into her throat. Not even worth $10. Not even as a beast of burden. Finch wiped sweat from his brow. $5 then? $5. And she's yours for the night, for the week, for as long as you keep her breathing. The sheriff snickered. "Told you, girl. You're mine for the night, or you're nothing." Cora's fingers curled into fists around the chain, knuckles white. And then a low, calm voice cut through the heat and the laughter like a knife. "Put me down for 50, the stranger said, "and she's not yours for the night. She's mine for as long as I decide she's under my protection." The crowd parted instinctively. A mountain man was walking forward, every step steady, deliberate, bringing the storm with him. The man who stepped into the open wasn't just tall. He looked like he had been carved out of the same stone as the mountains looming behind Red Hollow. He wore a battered leather coat that had clearly seen more winters than most men in town, the hem stained with dirt and old blood. A rifle rested easily in one hand, as if it weighed nothing, and a long knife rode his hip. His hair was dark and long, tied back at the nape of his neck, and a thick beard framed a hard, angular jaw. His eyes were the kind that made men look away first, pale, icy blue, sharp enough to cut through lies and cowardice in one glance. "Jonah Hale," someone whispered near the back. "That's Jonah Hale." A ripple of unease moved through the crowd. Stories about Jonah traveled farther than any stagecoach. They said he'd once been a soldier, then a scout, and then something else entirely, something that lived between the civilized world and the wilderness, answering to neither. They said he'd buried his wife and child alone, high in the pines, and that since then nothing in him had thawed. Finch tried to turn his shock into a smile. "Well now, Mr. Hale, $50 is a generous offer for this product." The words snapped in the air. Jonah's gaze slid to him, flat and cold. "She's not a product. Count the gold." Finch cleared his throat, fingers fumbling as Jonah tossed a small pouch onto the table. Coins clinked against the wood, bright yellow flashes in the dusty light. Cora watched, hardly breathing. It was more money than anyone had ever been willing to put between her and suffering. More money than anyone had ever thought she was worth. Finch finished counting with shaking hands. $50, paid in full. She's yours, Mr. Hale." The sheriff chuckled. "Yours for the night, then?" Jonah turned his head slowly toward the sheriff. "No," he said, "not for the night." His lips didn't quite curve into a smile. "You said she was yours for the night or she was nothing. I'm telling you she's not yours at all. Not tonight, not ever." Cora's heart beat so hard she could hear the blood in her ears. She looked from one man to the other, waiting for the violence she'd seen so many times before. Instead, Jonah walked up onto the platform with a measured, unhurried stride. He stopped in front of her. Up close, he smelled of pine smoke and cold air, of leather and horse and something sharp, like metal left out in a storm. Cora forced herself to lift her gaze, expecting to find contempt or amusement. She found neither. What she saw in his eyes for one dizzy second wasn't pity either. It was something that looked dangerously like recognition, like he was staring at a wound that matched his own. Without a word, Jonah gripped the chain at her wrists. The metal cut into her skin as he twisted it once, twice, then snapped it against the edge of the iron post. The lock gave way with a painful jerk. Her arms dropped to her sides, still heavy, still trembling. He knelt. This terrifying, legendary mountain man actually knelt, just long enough to examine the shackle around her ankle. His fingers brushed the bruised skin there as he leveraged the knife, muttered something under his breath, and then the iron tore free, clattering loudly against the wood. For the first time in months, Cora was not physically bound to anything. Jonah rose to his full height, towering over her. "Can you walk?" he asked. His voice up close was low and rough, but not unkind. Cora's throat felt dry as sand. Yes, sir." "Jonah," he corrected. "If you're coming with me, you call me Jonah." Coming with him? As if that were simply decided. As if she had any say in anything that happened to her. Finch cleared his throat, clutching his money. "Just to be clear, Mr. Hale, your purchase grants you full rights. The girl has no papers anymore. She's off the books. You can work her, sell her, bed her, kill her. Town's not responsible for what happens now." A shaky laugh went up from a few men near the front. Cora's stomach turned. Jonah didn't even glance at Finch. He looked only at her. "Listen carefully, Cora O'Reilly." The way he said her name made her flinch. She hadn't heard it spoken properly in weeks. You belong to no one, not to this town, not to that man. His eyes flicked toward the sheriff, then back to her. If you walk away from here and vanish into the desert, no one will come looking. They don't care whether you live or die. She knew that already. She'd always known. He went on, voice like gravel sliding over stone. I've paid to remove you from this place. That's all money buys. What happens next is a choice. You can stay here, take your chances in a town that put a chain around your neck. His gaze swept the leering faces watching them. Or you can come with me into the mountains. It will be hard, cold, unforgiving. I am not gentle, and I don't promise you kindness every day. Only this. While you're under my roof, no one touches you without your consent. No one sells you. No one lays a hand on you and walks away standing. Cora stared at him, her mind scattered between the memory of Irish rain on slate roofs, the stink of the ship that brought her here, the first master's cellar, the second master's barn, the third master's belt. Every time men had spoken for her, decided for her, traded her. Now this stranger was talking about choice. You don't know me, she whispered. You don't know what I've done, how much trouble I bring. I eat too much, I break things, I'm slow, You survived, Jonah cut in quietly. That's all I need to know. The sheriff snorted. Oh, come on, Hale. If you're taking her, we all know what it's for. Don't dress it up. Jonah turned, and the look he gave the sheriff made the man's smirk die on his lips. You're half right, Jonah said. She is mine for the night. Tonight, she'll sleep in a bed with a door that locks, under a roof that doesn't leak, without a hand on her throat. His voice lowered to a dangerous murmur. And if any man in this town has a problem with that, he can settle it with me. A tense silence fell over the square. Cora's knees wobbled. The sun was too bright, the air too thin. She wasn't used to hope. It felt like dizziness, like standing too close to a cliff's edge. Jonah stepped down from the platform and held out his hand. Well, he asked, do you want to stay and let them decide your value again tomorrow? Or do you want to take the worst gamble of your life and come with a man who doesn't know how to live with people, but knows how to keep them alive? Her hand shook as she lifted it. For a moment, she hovered there, halfway between everything that had broken her and something she didn't understand. Then Cora O'Reilly placed her palm in Jonah Hale's. The crowd watched as he led her away from the auction block, past the sheriff, past Finch, past the men who had priced her body like cattle. No one stopped them. No one dared. By the time they reached the edge of town, Cora realized her wrists were bare, her steps were her own, and the only chain left was the invisible one, tied to the quiet promise in Jonah's words. You're mine for the night had always meant danger in her world. For the first time, it sounded like safety. The desert had begun to cool by the time Jonah and Cora left Red Hollow behind. The sky blazed with streaks of orange and red that looked almost violent, as if the sun itself was burning the day down to embers. Jonah walked ahead, steady, unhurried, his long stride forcing Cora to take 2 steps for every one of his. She clutched the bundled clothes he had given her at the inn, simple things, sturdy things, and tried not to stumble on the uneven ground. Hours passed before either of them spoke. You're limping, Jonah finally said without looking back. I'm fine, she whispered, though each step sent a bolt of pain through the raw skin where shackles had rubbed deep. You're not. He stopped so abruptly she nearly collided with him. Jonah turned, looked her over once, then crouched. "Show me." "I don't—" "Show me, Cora." Something in his tone, not harsh, but immovable, made her obey. She lifted the hem of her skirt just enough to reveal the bruised ring circling her ankle, already swelling. Jonah's jaw tightened. He didn't touch her, not yet, but he studied the injury like a man memorizing an enemy's weakness. "We're not walking another mile like that." He straightened. "Come on." Before she could ask, Jonah bent, swept an arm beneath her knees, and lifted her off the ground as though she weighed no more than a sack of flour. Cora gasped, grabbing his shoulders instinctively. Heat flared in her cheeks. "Put me down. I'm heavy. You'll hurt your back." "Cora." His voice rumbled through his chest and into her palms. "If I couldn't lift you, you'd still be chained to that auction pole." Her mouth opened, then closed. She had no answer for that. He carried her until they reached a narrow path carved between scrub brush and low boulders, where a lone horse waited, black as a moonless midnight, stamping impatiently. "This is Ash," Jonah said. "He won't bite." The horse snorted loudly in disagreement, but Jonah ignored it. He mounted first, then offered his hand. Cora stared at it. Her fingers trembled. No one had offered her a hand in months, maybe years. Slowly, she took it. Jonah lifted her easily onto the saddle behind him. Her body wobbled, and she instinctively gripped his waist to steady herself. The warmth of him seeped through her palms, unsettling in its steadiness. "Hold on," he said. She did. They rode in silence, climbing higher and higher until the desert flattened into sweeping foothills. As night fell, the wind grew sharp, slicing through Cora's thin dress, even with the coat Jonah had thrown over her shoulders. She shivered. Without a word, Jonah shifted, drawing back one side of his fur-lined coat so it draped partially over her too. It smelled like pine and smoke and something colder beneath it, something that spoke of long winters and longer loneliness. The gesture was simple. It broke her anyway. "Thank you," she whispered. His answer was a quiet grunt that somehow meant more than words. When they finally stopped, the moon was rising, wide, pale, and watchful. Jonah dismounted, then turned and lifted Cora down. The ground was cold beneath her boots. "Sit," he said, pointing to a flat rock. "I'll make a fire before you freeze." She watched him work, efficient, practiced, almost graceful in how he moved through the dark. Within minutes, a fire crackled to life, painting his face in shifting gold and shadow. He didn't look at her. He simply set a tin cup of water beside her and moved toward his saddlebags. Only when he retrieved a small leather pouch, herb-scented, worn, did she tense. What is that? Medicine?" He crouched in front of her, the fire casting light on the scar running along his cheek. "For your ankle." She hesitated. Jonah held her gaze steadily. "Cora, I'm not going to hurt you. If I wanted to, I wouldn't have waited until now." That was the truth. Brutal, simple, undeniable. She nodded. He reached for her ankle, slowly, deliberately, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His hands were warm, rough, surprisingly gentle as he examined the swelling. "This is bad," he muttered. "You've been chained a long time." 6 weeks, she said softly. Before that it was rope." Jonah's nostrils flared. "Who?" "My last owner." The word tasted like ash. He didn't speak again, but the air around him shifted, a tightening, a quiet promise of violence. He cleaned the wound with cool water, then rubbed in an herbal paste that stung sharply before easing into a deep warmth. Cora bit back a whimper. Jonah's thumb brushed the bone of her ankle by accident, and she flinched. He immediately pulled back. "Too rough?" "No," she whispered. I'm not used to kindness." That made him pause. His eyes lifted to hers, blue like frozen rivers, but flickering now with something almost human. "You'll get used to it," he said. The words were simple, but they rocked her harder than the auctioneer's whip. When he finished tending her injuries, Jonah stood. "Eat." He placed a tin plate in her hands. Beans, salted pork, warm bread. Real food. Cora stared at it with disbelief, then at him. "This is too much for me." "It's not enough," Jonah said firmly. "Eat." She obeyed. He sat a few feet away, close enough that she could hear the steady cadence of his breathing, but far enough that he gave her space. He didn't watch her eat. He watched the tree line instead, as if expecting danger at any moment. Only when she finished did he glance her way. "You're safe tonight," he said. "I meant what I said." Cora swallowed. "And tomorrow?" "Tomorrow you come with me into the mountains." His voice softened by a fraction. "If you want." "And if I don't?" "Then I'll give you supplies and point you toward the nearest settlement." He held her gaze. "I won't keep you against your will." No man had ever said that to her. She wrapped her arms around herself, the truth settling heavily in her chest. "I don't know how to trust anyone anymore. I don't expect you to trust me tonight." Jonah leaned back slightly, looking into the fire. "Just rest. That's enough." Silence fell, quiet, heavy, but not hostile. As the fire crackled and the wind whispered across the grass, Cora felt her eyelids grow heavy. She fought sleep at first, afraid she'd wake to something worse. But Jonah Hale didn't move toward her, didn't touch her, didn't even face her. He sat with his back half turned, watching the dark, guarding her. For the first time in months, Cora O'Reilly drifted into sleep without fear clawing at her ribs. At dawn, the fire would burn low, and the mountains would rise like giants ahead of them. But for this one night, she belonged to no one's cruelty, only to safety. By the time Jonah led Cora into the high country, the world had changed. Gone were the dry winds and scorched earth of the desert. Up here, the air tasted crisp and clean, scented with pine resin and cold stone. The mountains rose around them like ancient guardians, their peaks brushing against low gray clouds. Cora clung to the saddle horn as Ash climbed the narrow trail, hooves striking sparks from hidden stones. Jonah rode ahead, as silent and steady as the mountain itself. Only when the trail widened did he speak. "We're close." Cora's heart fluttered. Close to what? Safety? Or another kind of captivity? She didn't know. All she had to guide her was his voice, deep, rough-edged, strangely reassuring. A few minutes later, the trees parted, and there it was, the cabin. It stood in a clearing ringed with firs, built of thick, weather-aged logs. Smoke curled from the stone chimney. A small shed leaned against one side, and behind it a fenced garden, overgrown but still holding late summer squash and carrots. The roof had been recently patched, the porch swept clean. The place wasn't merely functional, it was tended. Cora stared in awe. "It's beautiful." Jonah swung off the horse without answering. He tied Ash to the hitching post, then turned toward her. "You'll need help getting down." Before she could protest, he lifted her gently by the waist. Her breath caught when her feet touched the ground, ankles still tender beneath the new boot he'd bought her. Jonah's hands remained at her sides a moment longer than necessary, steadying her, not holding her. Then he stepped away. "Inside," he said softly. "You need warmth." Cora followed him onto the porch. When he opened the door, a wave of warm air washed over her. The inside of the cabin glowed with firelight. A large stone hearth dominated the far wall. A bearskin rug lay on the floor, and shelves lined with books, jars of herbs, and hand-carved figurines filled the space. A sturdy wooden table sat beside a window, with 2 chairs tucked beneath it. One chair, she noticed, was a little worn on the right side, from someone sitting alone every night. Jonah set his rifle on a rack near the door. "Sit," he said. "I'll make tea." Cora perched on the edge of a chair, uncertain. The cabin felt like a home, his home, a place full of memories she didn't understand and shadows she couldn't see. While he heated water in a blackened kettle, Cora looked down at her hands. They trembled. She clasped them together, knuckles whitening. "You're safe here," Jonah said suddenly. She jumped. I didn't doubt you." "Yes, you did." His tone wasn't accusing, just observant. "And you have every reason to." Cora said nothing. What could she say? Men had promised safety before, and every promise had broken like rotten boards beneath her feet. Jonah poured steaming tea into a tin cup and set it before her. "Chamomile and pine, it'll settle you." She sipped. The warmth slid down her throat, spreading through her chest like sunlight, pushing back a cold fog. She closed her eyes, savoring it. "You can rest here as long as you need," Jonah said. "No one will find you up here." Her eyes snapped open. "The auctioneer, the buyers, do you think they'll come?" "No." His answer was immediate, certain. "But if they do?" He met her gaze fully, steady, unwavering. "They won't leave." Cora didn't know how to respond. Gratitude and fear twisted inside her until they felt almost the same. A soft thump sounded outside. Jonah motioned for her to stay seated as he crossed the room. He opened the door, whistled once, and a huge wolf-like dog trotted in, gray, broad-shouldered, eyes bright with intelligence. Cora gasped. "Oh, he's friendly," Jonah said. "Mostly." The dog padded over and sniffed her hand. After a moment, he sat beside her chair, tail sweeping the floor. "He likes you," Jonah observed. I don't know why." Jonah shrugged. "Animals know things." When she looked confused, he added, "They know fear and goodness. They know what a person's made of." Heat rose in Cora's cheeks. No one had ever looked at her and implied she held anything close to goodness. Jonah rebuilt the fire, stacking logs with practiced movements. Sparks drifted upward, glowing like embers in his dark hair. The man had a weight about him, something carved by grief and sharpened by solitude, but he moved with care. Everything he touched, he treated with intention. Cora watched him, unable to look away. When the cabin warmed, Jonah stood. "Come on, you should see your room." "My room?" She blinked. "Down the hall." He led her to a small bedroom on the right. A handmade quilt covered the bed, fresh linens, a sturdy dresser, and on the nightstand, a single candle. "This was Emma's room," Jonah said quietly. "My daughter." Cora froze. "Jonah, I shouldn't take this room." "She's gone." His voice was gravel soft, "and she wouldn't want it empty." Cora touched the quilt gently. "Who made this?" "Clara." He paused. "My wife." Her breath hitched. Pain flickered in Jonah's eyes, not wild, not burning, just a deep, old ache. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He nodded, accepting, not thanking. Jonah Hale wasn't a man who needed pity, but he didn't push her away for offering kindness. "You should rest," he said. "You haven't slept a full night in months. Will you stay close?" She hated how small her voice sounded. "I'll be in the main room. I won't be far." He stepped back. "If you need anything, call." When he left, Cora sat on the bed. The mattress was soft beneath her weight. Too soft, too gentle. She wasn't used to comfort. It frightened her more than pain. After a long moment, she blew out the candle and lay down. She expected nightmares. Instead, her body sank into the warmth, and for the first time since she stepped onto American soil, sleep pulled her under like a warm tide. But a scream ripped her awake hours later. Not hers. Jonah's. Cora bolted upright. The sound came again, raw, strangled, torn from a place beyond words. She ran into the main room. Jonah was thrashing on the bearskin rug, drenched in sweat, breath ragged, his hands clawed at nothing, his face twisted in anguish. "No, no, please, leave her, Emma." Cora knelt beside him. "Jonah, Jonah, it's Cora, you're dreaming." His eyes snapped open, wild, disoriented. He grabbed her wrist. She didn't flinch. "Jonah," she whispered, "you're safe. You're home. I'm here." His grip slowly loosened. His breathing began to steady. He stared at her, as if seeing her for the first time. Not the woman from the auction stage, but the one kneeling over him now, fearlessly, gently. "You shouldn't have come out," he murmured. "I could have hurt you." "You didn't." "I could have." "But you didn't." Silence stretched between them, fragile, warm, unspoken. Jonah's shoulders slumped. He looked older suddenly, tired. Cora placed her hand softly over his. "You're not alone, Jonah." His eyes closed. It felt like a confession. After a long moment, he whispered, "Go back to bed." "I will, but only if you promise to wake me if you need anything." Jonah huffed a quiet breath, almost a laugh. "That's not how this works." "Tonight it is." Their eyes met. Something shifted. Something began. "Fine," he said, voice low. "Tonight." Cora returned to her room. Jonah sat against the hearth, head bowed, hands clasped loosely between his knees. Neither of them slept for a long time, not because they were afraid, but because something warm and unfamiliar had begun to settle between them. A beginning, fragile and real, a beginning neither of them knew how to name yet, but they would, soon. The next morning dawned pale and cold, sunlight bleeding slowly over the ridgeline. Cora woke to the sound of chopping wood, heavy, rhythmic strikes that seemed to shake the very bones of the cabin. She wrapped herself in a shawl and stepped outside. Jonah stood near the edge of the clearing, shirt discarded, breath steaming in the chill air. His muscles moved like coiled ropes beneath scarred skin as he split log after log, the axe whistling through the air. Each strike carried a force too controlled to be rage and too relentless to be peace. He was working something out of himself. Cora approached slowly. "You didn't sleep again." He didn't pause. "Didn't need to." "That's not true." Another crack. The log split cleanly. "I'm not fragile, Cora." "I didn't say you were." This time the axe stopped mid-air. He set it down, wiped his brow, and finally turned to her. "You shouldn't worry about me." "I'm not worried," she lied gently. "I'm aware." Something flickered in his eyes, recognition, maybe even gratitude, but it disappeared behind the familiar guarded expression. "We've got work to do," he said. "Storm's coming tonight." They spent the morning preparing the cabin. Jonah repaired a loose shutter, while Cora cleaned the kitchen and tended the small garden. The easy rhythm of work soothed her. For the first time in her life, she felt useful, wanted even. Jonah didn't hover or correct her. He simply let her exist alongside him, as though she had always belonged there. By midday, she found him smoking fish on a rack behind the cabin. He glanced up when she approached. "You're getting around easier." "My ankle feels better." "Good. You'll need it." "For what?" He hesitated. Then, "We might have visitors soon." Cold swept through her stomach. "From the auction?" "Not yet," he said, sounding almost regretful. "But the valley talks. Traders pass information up the mountain without meaning to. Word spreading about a man who bought a woman from Blackwater and rode north. That narrows things down." Cora's mouth went dry. "You think they'll come for me?" "I know they will. And you'll fight them." "I'll end them." His tone didn't rise. It didn't need to. Cora swallowed. "Jonah, I don't want anyone else to suffer because of me." He fixed her with that unflinching amber gaze. "What was done to you was wrong. I won't let anyone profit from it." She looked down at her hands. "I've never had anyone stand up for me." "Get used to it." The words struck deeper than he realized. Later, as clouds thickened overhead, Cora prepared supper, rabbit stew simmering with thyme and wild onions. Jonah returned from gathering firewood, brushing snow from his hair, and paused at the doorway. Something softened in his expression. "You cooked." She flushed. "I hope that's all right." "It's more than all right." They ate by the fire. The crackle of the logs and the scent of pine smoke wrapped around them like a blanket. For a long time, they ate in silence, comfortable, steady. Then Jonah spoke without looking up. "Do you know why that auction exists?" Cora stiffened. "Because people are cruel. That's part of it. But there's more." He set his bowl down. "The railroad company is expanding south. They need labor, and they've started buying people rather than paying wages." Her stomach lurched. "Buying people?" He nodded. "Women especially. They call it indentured service. But that's not what it is." "Slavery," she whispered. "Yes. So the men who bought me were likely working with them." Jonah leaned back, shadows flickering across his face. "If the railroad wants you back, they won't send drunks with rope. They'll send professionals. That means we don't have much time." Cora's breath hitched. "What do they want with me? I'm not strong. I'm not skilled." "You're a woman they paid for," he said simply. "That's enough." She felt sick. Jonah's hand suddenly covered hers, warm, steady, grounding. She hadn't noticed him move. "I won't let them take you." Her voice trembled. "Why? Why me, Jonah? You don't even know me." "I know enough." "Enough for what?" His jaw tightened. He withdrew his hand. "Enough to protect you." Something in his tone warned her not to push, but something in her heart refused to stop. "Jonah, what are you afraid of?" That made him still. Completely. Cora pressed gently, not cruelly. "Last night, when you dreamed, you called their names, Clara, Emma, and someone else, a boy." He looked away. "If losing them broke you," she whispered, "why would helping me be different?" Jonah rose abruptly and walked to the far side of the cabin. He braced one hand against the wall, head bowed. His voice came low. "Because losing them taught me what happens when I stand by and do nothing." Cora stood too, slowly. "You didn't do nothing." He shook his head. "I didn't do enough." "You couldn't have saved them." His shoulders tensed. "I should have tried harder." "Jonah, I shouldn't be talking about this." His words were tight, pained. "You're not here to fix me. No, she said softly, but I'm here. He turned. Snow light filtered through the window, haloing his figure in pale gray. His eyes were shadowed. You don't know what you're saying. I do. You think I'm strong, he murmured. But this, what's inside me, it's not strength. It's wreckage. Wreckage can be rebuilt. He stared at her, stunned, disarmed, undone by her simplicity. A long, breathless silence settled between them. Then Jonah stepped closer, not touching, not yet, but near enough that she felt his warmth. You shouldn't care about me, Cora. I do. It'll only make things harder. For who? For both of us. The fire snapped. Outside, wind rattled the shutters. Snow began to fall, thin, soft flakes drifting against the window pane. Cora lifted her chin. I survived the auction. I survived 3 owners. I survived more than anyone ever should. I can handle caring about you. His breath caught. Something inside him shifted, like a locked gate creaking open. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Storm's coming hard tonight. We can face it together. Another silence, this one charged, electric. Jonah exhaled rough and final, as though surrendering to a truth he'd fought too long. Then stay close, he said, no matter what happens. Cora felt her pulse flutter. I will. And with that promise hanging between them, fragile, real, dangerous, the storm broke fully outside. Snow hammered the roof in heavy sheets as night thickened around the cabin. The wind screamed through the trees, bending the pines into black silhouettes. Inside, the fire threw long shadows across the log walls, flickering over Jonah's stern profile as he checked each weapon one last time. Stay behind me no matter what, he said, sliding a knife into his belt. Cora stood near the hearth, hands trembling against her skirt. Jonah, he corrected quietly. Just Jonah. She swallowed. Jonah, how do you know they're coming tonight? He didn't look up. Because storms hide footsteps, and men who hunt people prefer to strike when no one can run. As if on cue, a distant crunch echoed through the snow outside. Cora froze. Was that? Yes. Jonah reached for the rifle leaning beside the chair. We're out of time. He crossed the room and gently cupped her cheek. Even now, on the edge of bloodshed, his touch was steady, grounding. Whatever happens, I need you to trust me. I do, she whispered. Jonah nodded once, then moved to the window. He blew out the lanterns, plunging the cabin into shadow. The fire alone cast enough light for him to see. Cora pressed a hand to her chest, forcing her breath to steady. She didn't know how to fight. She had never held a gun, but she refused to be helpless. Not again. Through the window, Jonah saw them first, a line of dark shapes moving between snow-laden trees, disciplined and deliberate. Not drunks, not fools, professionals. 3 in front, he murmured, 2 circling the sides, 1 covering the rear. Cora's blood ran cold. They're surrounding us. They think they are. Another crunch of boots. Closer this time. Jonah lowered the rifle to firing height. When I start shooting, stay on the ground, crawl to the bedroom, and bar the door. I'm not leaving you. You're not. You're surviving. Before she could protest, a heavy fist slammed against the cabin door. Open up, Blackwood, a voice barked. We're here for the girl. She belongs to the company. Jonah stepped back from the door, rifle raised. She belongs to no one. A harsh laugh. You can't protect her. You couldn't protect the last one either. Jonah went rigid. Cora's heart clenched. They knew about Clara. The voice outside sneered. enjoying the wound it had opened. "Thought we didn't dig into your history? We know everything, and we'll bury this one next to your wife." The moment the words left the man's mouth, Jonah fired. The shot ripped through the door plank, and the man outside dropped without finishing another breath. Chaos exploded. Gunfire erupted from both sides of the cabin. Bullets punched through the logs, splinters flying. Jonah grabbed Cora and pulled her to the ground, shielding her with his body. "Go!" he roared above the gunfire. "Crawl to the bedroom, now!" Tears stung her eyes, but she nodded and scrambled across the floorboards as Jonah rose into a crouch and fired again, hitting the second man as he rushed the porch. Two more darted from the tree line. Jonah pivoted, shot one in the shoulder, and dove behind the table as bullets shredded the wooden frame. Cora reached the bedroom doorway, then paused. Jonah was outnumbered 4-1. He would die if she hid. A memory struck her. The auction block, the jeering crowd, the man raising his hand to strike her while she trembled, powerless. She had sworn she would never again let fear chain her to the ground. Not tonight. She crawled back to the hearth, grabbed the iron poker from beside the fire, and gripped it with both hands. It was heavy, awkward, but it was something. Jonah saw her. His eyes widened. "Cora, what are you doing? Go!" "No." "Damn it!" Before he could finish, the back window shattered. A man climbed through, boots crunching glass, gun raised toward Jonah's exposed side. Cora didn't think. She charged. The poker slammed into the man's wrist, knocking the gun free. He howled, spinning toward her. His hand shot out and grabbed her hair, yanking her head back. "Don't touch her!" Jonah roared. He tackled the man, slamming him into the wall. A struggle followed, a brutal, messy blur of fists and elbows, until Jonah grabbed the man's knife and drove the hilt into his temple. The man dropped. Jonah turned to Cora, chest heaving. Snow blew through the broken window, swirling around them. "You could have been killed." "So could you," she said. Something broke in him. Fear, fury, longing. She couldn't tell. He gripped her shoulders, foreheads nearly touching. "You're not losing me," she breathed. His voice shook. "I'm not losing you either." Outside, 2 attackers remained, regrouping for another assault. Jonah raised his rifle. "This ends now." The wind howled harder, rattling the damaged shutters as if the mountain itself were warning them that the night wasn't done testing their strength. Cora picked up the fallen pistol from the floor, hands shaking, but determined. Jonah glanced at her, an unreadable emotion flickering in his eyes. Fear for her, pride in her, love he no longer bothered to hide. "Stay behind the table," he murmured, voice rough. "If they breach the door, aim for their legs. It'll slow them long enough for me to finish the job." She nodded, swallowing hard. "I won't run, not while you're still standing." The corner of his mouth lifted, small, reluctant, but real. He turned back toward the door. Snow blew through the cracks, swirling on the floorboards like cold ghosts. Outside, the remaining men regrouped. Cora heard mutters, angry, desperate, frightened. They had expected an easy job. Take the woman, collect the money, ride south. They hadn't planned on Jonah Blackwood. A shot rang out from the tree line. Jonah fired back instantly. "2 left," he said softly. Another shot clipped the doorframe, splintering wood inches from his face. Jonah didn't flinch. Instead, he shifted, silent as a wolf, and slipped toward the shadowed side window. Cora's pulse hammered in her throat. Even wounded, he moved like someone who knew these mountains better than the men hunting him. The storm covered his footfalls. The darkness wrapped around him as if it had been waiting. Cora knelt behind the table, gripping the pistol so tightly her fingers ached. She whispered a prayer, not for safety, but for courage. The next moments blurred into deadly silence. Then, a grunt, a scuffle, a muffled gunshot. Cora's breath caught. Seconds later, the last man bolted from behind the stable, sprinting toward the woods. Jonah emerged behind him, snow dusted across his hair and coat, blood streaking one shoulder. He didn't shoot the fleeing man. He simply raised his voice, cold as iron. "Tell whoever wants her. She is under my protection, and I don't forgive twice." The man stumbled, nearly fell, then vanished into the trees without looking back. The forest went still. The storm softened, and Jonah finally lowered his rifle. Cora rushed outside despite the cold biting at her bare feet. Snow soaked her hem instantly. Jonah steadied himself against the porch post, breath heavy, wound bleeding through his shirt. She slipped under his arm, supporting his weight with her whole body. "You shouldn't have come out," he murmured. "You shouldn't have been alone." He stared down at her, eyes fierce, undone, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen. "You stood your ground tonight. You fought for yourself, for me." "I wasn't afraid," she whispered. "You were," Jonah corrected gently, "but you stayed anyway." Snow fell around them in soft flakes now, drifting, quiet. Jonah cupped her cheek with a trembling hand. "Cora, you've changed this place. You've changed me." She leaned into him, tears warming her chilled skin. "Does that scare you?" "A little," he admitted, voice barely above a breath. "But losing you scares me more." The wind hushed. The world shrank to the space between them. Jonah lowered his forehead to hers. "Come inside. The storm's over." Arm in arm they stepped back into the cabin's glow, the fire crackling, the shadows gentler now, the danger behind them, but the world still waiting, a love forged in fear, tested in blood, left standing anyway. The cabin glowed softly as the fire settled into embers, casting warm light over the wooden walls and the two figures curled close beside it. Jonah tightened the blanket around Cora's shoulders, his fingers brushing her cheek with a gentleness no one in Blackwater would ever believe he possessed. "You're safe here," he murmured, voice low and steady. "As long as you want to stay, this is your home." Cora's eyes filled, but her smile didn't tremble. "I've never had one before, not until now." He pulled her closer, the storm fading behind them, a new beginning breathing quietly between their hearts. "Tell me, where in the world are you listening from tonight?"